And finally, a major win for tax advocacy. The National Treasury has made a U-turn, deciding to reconsider its controversial plan to scrap a tax exemption on foreign retirement benefits for South African residents. The initial proposal would have meant that pensions earned by professionals and retirees from the time working abroad would suddenly become taxable here. The move was fiercely opposed by industry bodies, including the South African Institute of Taxation, who argued it would make the country less attractive to skilled immigrants and returning expats. To break down this reversal, what it means, we're joined by Keitumetse Sesana, Acting Deputy CEO of the SA Institute of Taxation, who was instrumental in making the case to Treasury. Keitumetse, good to speak to you. Thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me, Hugo.
So why was it so critical to stop the repeal of this tax exemption on foreign pensions?
So we need to go back to the beginning. And we understand that National Treasury and SARS's objective is to broaden the tax base. It works for South Africans that we don't keep dipping or taxing the same tax base, right? That's why we're also squeezed as we feel the middle income plebs. This particular amendment, or this proposed amendment, would have circumvented that very objective of attaining and retaining people to come into South Africa to spend their money. Essentially, people who have earned income abroad are then exempted, so that income is exempt if they're no longer South African tax resident, and even if they come back to South Africa, that exempted income cannot be taxed by South Africa. This proposed repeal of the Section 10(1) Cap C2 amendment would mean that any foreign retirement fund or annuity or lump sum that you earned when you were not a South African tax resident would be taxed here. And therefore people here tax, and they were not going to come to South Africa.
Well, that seems pretty unfair for the ordinary person, right?
It's very unfair. It actually circumvented one of the canons of taxation, being certainty.
So what I'm keen to know is, how did SARS even arrive at that before we get to a place of repeal?
So if you look at the expenditure memorandum, there were two instances that they looked at. Because we have this exemption, South Africa loses its outright right to tax foreign retirement funds because we have the exemption. Even in instances where the foreign contracting state would give us the permission to tax the income, because of this exemption, we weren't able to. So Treasury and SARS looked at that and said, we have to obviously circumvent this double non-taxation and therefore repeal the exemption. What they lacked or did not do was to analyze which double tax agreements this would actually affect. And the blanket repeal is what caused this upheaval and pushback to Treasury to say, no, go back to the drawing board, because this would circumvent people coming to South Africa, and it cascades. We don't have foreign direct investment, there's no value-added tax consumption, and we just continue taxing the very same base.
Well, I've got one more question. That speaks to what we understand, that Treasury has stepped back for now, but from what we understand, the issue isn't fully closed. So what does a balanced long-term solution look like?
So a balanced long-term solution, and we must give it to National Treasury, Hugo. It's not right for a country to give away its taxing rights, which is what we do by means of this exemption. What National Treasury has said recently, we met them in Parliament at the SCOF, is that they're going to go back. It's a partial withdrawal for now. They're going to be looking at which double tax agreements actually place us in this position where we give away our taxing rights, and what the quantum is of the revenue that we're foregoing to the fiscus. You're very right that it is not, it's just a stop, it's a pause for now. So South Africans that do have these foreign retirement funds or annuities can continue with the status quo, but please note that Treasury is going to go back, and a balanced approach in our perspective would be, and we've made this in our submissions, consider grandfathering or carving out. So those who have contributed to foreign retirement funds on the basis of this exemption should then have those, money secured and not fall within the tax net. That is very fair. And if this is going to apply, this taxation will of course apply. It should be from years of assessment beginning, for example, 1 Jan 2027 going forward. It should not apply retrospectively, just so we can have that certainty for taxpayers. But South Africans must note that we cannot have this continued double non-taxation. It's not good for our country either.
So very quickly, I'd imagine that Treasury has sights on speed dial. So these conversations, which are constructive, will be ongoing?
Yes, they are ongoing. So we can confirm that the DDG has mentioned that there will be consultation on this. For now, the status quo remains, but as said, we will of course be involved in those conversations to ensure that an effective solution is reached and the right amount of tax is paid.
Okay, and a word of advice to those that potentially could be impacted by future decisions?
So it would be consult with your tax practitioner, registered tax practitioner, understand what your status is, quantify what the possible taxation could be if you do become a South African tax resident, and then look, of course, at what the double tax agreement in your contracting state would say, and have those arguments ready so you can present to Treasury. In fact, Hugo, we had individuals for the first time this year, when we had the workshops with Treasury, come and present their case to say, I come from the UK, from Canada, they're not taxing me there, why are you taxing me here? So Treasury wants to see those numbers. So have that on hand. If you'd like us to advocate for you, we're welcome to do so. But for now, status quo remains.
Well, you've done great in terms of advocacy. Keitumetse, thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having us.